right, y'all. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Erin Carroll from the Louisiana Department of Education, and I am joined today by Michelle Demolier, who has recently joined our team, and you may have started receiving some emails from, and we will hear from later. So thank you for logging on today. It has been a while since we got all of our early childhood ancillary certificate programs together, and we appreciate your continued participation and attendance to these calls. There are several key updates that we want to cover today. This should take no more than an hour, and we will do our best to get an emailed copy of these slides and a recording of the video shared with you in the next several days. If you want to replay this just for fun or share it with anybody who missed the meeting today. So there are 4 key areas that we're going to cover today. First, we're going to do a quick update on early childhood performance profiles. As many of you may already know, last week the Louisiana Department of Education released school performance scores and early childhood performance profiles. There was a statewide webinar regarding this release almost 2 weeks ago now that I know many of you did log on to. Because that webinar exists, we will really just touch on the highlights of the results from the performance profiles today and think a little bit about how that might inform early childhood ancillary certificate programs. The second thing we want to do is talk about how we are preparing for July 2019. So we all know that July 2019 is when the early childhood ancillary certificate requirement goes into effect. This is a long-awaited deadline, and we want to be sure that everybody in the field is very familiar with this requirement and some of the details around it. I know that there are some complicated features of these timelines, so we want to review that, as I know you all received many questions about it. The third section of this presentation will talk about expectations for approved programs. So there is not new information here. However, we wanted to, in a concise and clear manner, talk about what is really required for all programs as they run cohorts. Many of us are in our second or third cohort of candidates, and it's always helpful to refresh. It's also helpful for us to continue to think about how we can make this clear and easy for you all as far as following the requirements that we have from the state. And then fourth, we'll wrap up with a few updates from the department. So updates on progress, areas for support, and then available resources for approved programs. So where are all of these documents that we are referring to? I know they build up. So with that, I'm going to jump into talking a little bit about the 2018 performance profile overview. So this slide is probably not brand new to anybody here. As we all know, Louisiana has been working to establish a system of early childhood performance profiles really since Act 3 passed in 2012. Through our unified rating system, Louisiana measures core elements needed for positive child outcomes, provides a clear and focused path to improvement, and gives family an easy way to compare choices in their community. So there are 2 key features of these performance profiles, which we've all looked at before. This is our rating, which is derived from class observations, and then informational metrics that measure the use of best practices. So we often focus on the class ratings and observation scores, and I will talk about those in a minute. But we also want to pay attention to the critical information we get from our informational metrics. So that's how sites are using curriculum, whether they're using gold, and importantly for this group, the credentialing of teachers. Just as a reminder, this information can always be found at louisianaschools.com. We can look that up by each site on louisianaschools.com. There's also a posting of scores that is on our website. If you look under performance profiles, that's a page on the early childhood landing page if you, for instance, wanted to look across your community. So at a high level, our overall results for this year are very positive. We've seen improvement across all dimensions and domains when we compare to our 2016-2017 results. That means that the average score in every dimension and every domain improved, and then the average score for each program type improved. That means that the average score for school-based programs, Head Start programs, and child care programs improved. We see exemplar sites in each program type. So we see sites getting that excellent rating in child care, Head Start, and pre-K. And more than a third of our community networks have at least one excellent site. We know that local observer accuracy is increasing, and while all of this is good, we still see some key differences in our instructional support and engaged support for learning scores. And so we know that that's a key area that we want to continue to focus on as a state and as preparation programs that are working with our child care teachers. So this chart displays a bunch of numbers, but basically it's showing what our average scores were for 2015-2016, which was our practice year, 2016-2017, which was our performance profile scores from last year, and then 2017-2018, which are our new performance profile scores. So we really see a big decrease in this year's scores in the number of programs that are receiving that approaching proficient, and an increase in the number of sites that are receiving that proficient and excellent rating. Specifically with the excellent, we see that it more than doubled. So this is really good news as our state. As teacher preparation programs, you all should feel proud of these results, as we know that it is the training and preparation for our teachers that's making this difference. We won't spend too much time talking about these, but they're available to you. So this is looking at our domains. So breaking down, you can see where there was the most growth and where the growth was more minor. However, noting that we see that positive uptick across each domain for every year. This is another very important chart, especially for those of us working with a specific population. So here we're almost exclusively working with our child care sites. And we see that yet again, we saw improvement for all our site types, but especially in that child care site population. This is breaking it down even further to our dimension levels. So pre-K. And then for toddler. So those of us who have completed our class training, which I think many or all of us have in order to provide the high quality preparation needed as part of an ancillary certificate program, can really think about when we see this dimension level improvement, what these actions really mean. Another important thing to think about is where do we still need to continue to grow, and what might that mean for your coursework or for your community engagement. And then finally, this slide summarizes our informational metrics. So there are 4 different questions that we display and select. So this is the assessment rating. So are teachers using assessment? Their classroom ratio, their curriculum rating. So are they using Tier 1 curriculum? And then the % of teachers with a Louisiana certification. And as early childhood ancillary certificate programs, we're again really looking at that child care group. So we see that we are still having quite a bit of work to do in using assessment. So this is growth over the year. We see a huge uptick in the number of sites that are using a Tier 1 curriculum. This is important for you all to keep in mind as you're planning your curriculum and focus, knowing that with 73% of child care reporting a Tier 1 curriculum, it's likely that teachers have these materials. We just need continued support on say, how many of those need to have the ancillary certificate by 2019, but we know that 20% is low, so we definitely want to be mindful of that and keep working on it. So that's the full summary. I promised you it would be short of the performance profile webinar. I'm keeping it short because there is a lot of information we can cover there. I strongly suggest listening to the full webinar that was done on October 31. If you're looking for a recording of that, it should be available in our next early childhood newsletter, and the slides and additional information are online. However, now we will shift to our second agenda item, which is preparing for the early childhood ancillary certification. And I think I forgot to say this before, but you all are welcome to send me questions at any time through the chat feature, and we will try to address them all at the end. Okay. So we want to take just a few minutes and really go through step by step what are the requirements around the early childhood ancillary certificate. I know that many of you, all of you will find that this is a little bit of a refresher. We've talked about it quite a few times. However, it does seem to be a very complicated requirement. We get a lot of questions about it, and I have no doubt that you all get a lot of questions about it too. So as these dates are getting closer and closer, and as we know we will all get an uptick of questions as soon as people start seeing 2019 show up on their calendar, we want to take some time and talk through the exact requirements around the early childhood ancillary certificate. So there are a few key dates here, one of which has already passed. But by far, the most important date, the one we've been talking about for what feels like forever, but is really just 4 years, is July 1, 2019. So beginning on July 1, 2019, lead teachers in Type 3 child care centers who have been a lead teacher for 24 months or more must have the early childhood ancillary certificate as a minimum credential. So this is within 24 months of their start date as a lead teacher. So an assistant who moves into has 24 months from their first day as a lead teacher to get that ancillary certificate. A teacher who moves to a different Type 3 center has 24 months from their start date at that center to get the early childhood ancillary certificate. Next spring, all Type 3 centers will sign their academic approval assurances. This is something that happens every year, but this year, directors will be asked to assure that this is true as part of their academic approval assurances. So this is our key deadline that we're working towards, which is July 1, 2019. Already, there's been a change for training for the early childhood ancillary certificate. So it was as of July 2018, we had changes for where candidates must complete their training for their certificate. Teachers that are earning a CDA or technical diploma should attend a BESE-Approved Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate Program. So that's y'all. And hopefully you are sharing that message and you're finding people who know it. This is for people that are starting their training after July 1, or in the case of the CDA, had done 36 hours or less of their CDA training. So folks who are relatively new to the profession is who this requirement applies to. There is a waiver related to this, and we're going to talk about it in a second. And then the third key message that I know we have all been sharing with teachers, because we get a lot of questions about them, but are the supports that are available to help the field meet these requirements. So scholarships are available to attend approved programs, which y'all are familiar with, and we'll talk about a little bit more. And then teachers who earn the ancillary certificate and are working in a Type 3 center can qualify for increased tax credits, earning up to a level 4 within 2 years. So this is just a further clarification of the requirement around the 24 months. So as I said before, it is beginning July 1, 2019 that all lead teachers will be required to have a current credential or be earning the ancillary certificate within 24 months of their start date as lead teacher. So the way this breaks down exactly for July 1, 2019, if the individual had been working as a lead teacher prior to July 1, 2017, they must have that ancillary certificate as of July 1, 2019. If they began during the phase-in, then it is 24 months from their start date of hire. And if they began working after July 1, 2019, they will still have 24 months from their start date as a lead teacher. We want to quickly remind everybody of exactly how it works because I know we still have some new programs on here, when we are applying for our ancillary certificate through a CDA. So there's a new, for those that are new to the profession, the first thing they want to do if they're earning their ancillary certificate through a CDA or technical diploma is attend a BESE-Approved Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate Program. If they have attended an ancillary certificate program that prepares them for the CDA, they need to complete the training, get their transcript and their certificate from you all, and then complete that CDA. So that means taking the test, having the verified visit, and completing the professional portfolio. That's only if they're doing the CDA. If you're a technical diploma program, obviously that doesn't apply. Once they've done that, they've graduated from their BESE-Approved program. If they're doing their CDA, they have their CDA certificate in their hands from the Council for Professional Recognition. They then submit the ancillary certificate application to the LDE. So that includes the application, the transcript from the BESE-Approved Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate Program, and then their documentation of their CDA and technical diploma. Remembering, of course, that if they have their CDA, they must also have the GED or high school diploma, which they need to get their CDA anyway, so they will have hopefully already tracked that down. So the key change here is that if you are getting your ancillary certificate and you attended a BESE-Approved Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate Program, you must include that transcript from the BESE-Approved Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate Program with the application. Once all of that's turned in, the application will be processed and they will receive their ancillary certificate. We do, of course, want to remember these are not the only two ways. So CDA and technical diploma are only 2 of the 4 ways you could earn your ancillary certificate. You can also earn it through an associate degree in an early childhood related field or a bachelor degree or higher. In those cases, individuals also need to submit a transcript with their application. Okay, so we want to give a quick status update on the expansion of early childhood ancillary certificate programs. We know that we were working fast and furious, and by we, I really mean all of you, to launch enough programs so that we can really meet the supply and demand as of this July 2018 requirement, which of course has already come. So we know this change in the requirement that went into effect for July 2018 to attend an early childhood ancillary certificate program. Right now, we have 22 BESE-approved ancillary certificate programs offering coursework across the state, online, in combination online or in person, or fully in person, really giving options to teachers to meet whatever is best for them. And in just a second, we're going to talk a little bit more, but for those who cannot access a program, there's an approved program waiver. But for now, let's look at where our 22 programs are. So as we have expanded, and we have done so rapidly, it's the white areas on this map that show where we have programs serving. There are still several green areas where we do not have somebody formally recruiting and offering coursework. If you see an error on here, please let us know as soon as possible. We're trying to make sure our records are up to date, but this is what we want to make sure we're being accurate. So we still have ground to cover. That will be done either by approved programs expanding, by new programs joining, or likely some combination of the both. We have requests from individuals in some of these uncovered parishes all the time asking us, when do we get a program? They're looking for that high quality coursework that you offer. They're also looking for Louisiana Pathways scholarships. So we are, consistently trying to get up to all of these parishes. So this says 35. Some of those are separate townships that are counted here. So we've made a lot of progress, and we know that a lot of the untouched parishes are more rural, so there's not necessarily the vast majority of teachers who cannot access an approved program, but nonetheless, we really need to get to all of these regions. However, we do want to alert everybody to what happens if somebody cannot access an approved program. So with the addition of the requirement in July 2018, we also made available an approved program waiver. Approved program waivers are available for individuals who cannot access a BESE-approved early childhood ancillary certificate program, but would need to according to policy because they're just starting their CDA training and they have less than 36 hours completed, but they can't enroll in a program. There are 3 reasons somebody might get an approved program waiver. The first is if they live in an unserved parish. So as you can see, if you look at our approved program waiver, which is linked right here, that waiver lists the parishes that did not have somebody listed as of July 1, 2018. So anybody living in those parishes can get an approved program waiver. What that approved program waiver would let those individuals do is complete their training at a non-approved program, maybe an online course vendor who has not gotten approval, maybe finish out a few trainings with their child care resource and referral center, basically business as usual prior to July 2018. The second way somebody could qualify for an approved program waiver is if they had documented limited capacity in their parish program. So there may be a case where in some of our more populated parishes, there's one BESE-approved program that's available, and that BESE-approved program is at full capacity. If an individual seeks to attend a program and that program is full, they need to get a letter from the program and attach that to their approved program waiver application to allow them to go to a non-approved program. So this is important for early childhood ancillary certificate programs to note. If you are declining to enroll somebody because your program is full, you must be issuing them a letter. It doesn't have to be complicated, but it has to say just that they were not able to gain admittance at this time because the program was full. The third category is other geographic availability concerns. So in other exceptional cases, if there are reasons that they cannot attend a program, we can consider them in that category. It's important for y'all to know about the approved program waivers because this is one of the newer features of the ancillary certificate process. It is definitely one of the more complicated processes to describe, and I know that there are questions that come across, and you can point them in the right direction. This information is, like everything else, linked in our big FAQ document and available on our website. Okay. So now we're going to shift to the section of the program where we will give a refresher on expectations for approved programs. Again, none of this should be brand new information, but we want to make sure to organize and present it in a way that makes it easy for y'all to implement these procedures into your ancillary certificate programs. So we've broken this out into 3 key sections that follow the pattern of offering the program to a cohort of candidates. So there are things that all programs must do before beginning a new cohort of candidates, actions that programs may need to take throughout the cohort of candidates while they're offering the coursework, and then key actions that must happen at the completion of a cohort of candidates. We're going to talk through this slide by slide now, both Michelle and myself. I do want to let you know that there is a new summary guidance document. You can link it here. I think we link it at the end of the presentation, and we'll be sure to send it around or send around a link to it. But this also summarizes the expectations and requirements for before, throughout, and at the completion of a cohort of candidates. Okay. So prior to cohort start, there are a few requirements that we want to make sure to meet here. The first is the EC Ancillary Cohort Eligibility Form. You may have heard of this in the past as the Louisiana Pathways Eligibility Form. We've changed this to make it a little bit clearer that this form does not actually get sent to Louisiana Pathways, it gets sent to the LDOE. So all programs, regardless of what type of scholarship they are planning on pursuing, need to notify the department when they are starting a new cohort of candidates. This is essential for our monitoring and reporting requirements that we have. We've tried to make the form as simple as possible. It should not require any new information. And it helps us make sure that if you're using scholarships, we have the funds available and ready to roll, and that we are expecting applications on the right timeline. So this form has not changed. It's linked here. It is linked in our library, and we'll be sure to show it to you. But that must be done prior to cohort start for all programs. The second key set of actions for programs to keep in mind is supporting scholarship access. So this happens before cohort start. There are 2 types of scholarships that early childhood ancillary certificate programs might use. So this is the early childhood ancillary certificate program scholarships, which is what most of you are using, or college tuition scholarships. I'm not going to go into great detail here. We'll give a few reminders, but Please do remember that we've done multiple recorded webinars on the details around this. We are always happy to provide additional technical assistance in navigating this process, but it is really a webinar in itself. Just a few more key updates about, or not updates, but reminders. So I mentioned there are two types of scholarships that might be used to support attendance to an approved program. The first, and by far most common, is the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate Program Scholarships. These scholarships cover the cost of tuition and not supplies for eligible teachers. These scholarships are for programs that are not offering credit-bearing courses. So most of us right now are qualifying through these types of scholarships. These are the ones where we have given the requirements, where the programs themselves are responsible for collecting the scholarship applications and sending them to Jenny. We navigate the process of the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate Program Scholarships a little bit more as Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate programs, largely because we are not on a semester schedule, and we're not necessarily working out of a formal transcript office the way you might if you were offering college credit courses. The second type of scholarship that might be supporting an Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate program is the college tuition scholarships. So these are only for our BESE-Approved programs that are offering coursework as part of a degree pathway and are for credit. So these scholarships supplement existing financial aid, so the federal financial aid that students have received, and they do not cover supplies or student fees. The third scholarship that is not listed as a number 3 here because it is something that happens after the coursework, but that's the CDA scholarship. So this is a separate scholarship. It covers that $450 or so that's necessary to get that CDA professional portfolio. It is applied to completely separate from the coursework scholarships that I just talked through, but we always want to keep it in mind because it's a huge assistance to your candidates once they finish their program. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Michelle, who will talk us through what happens throughout the cohort and also at the end of the cohort.
Good afternoon. Throughout the cohort, the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate programs must meet the requirements for Louisiana Pathways scholarships by reporting the candidate academic progress, that's grades and attendance. If you're not participating in the scholarships, you would not need to do this, but for programs participating in Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate scholarships, you must confirm student attendance once class begins and submit invoice for payment to Louisiana Pathways. This will be your initial payment. Programs must report the academic standing and enrollment status of candidates by submitting updated rosters to Louisiana Pathways throughout the program. Louisiana Pathways will confirm the scholarship criteria are still being met before processing additional scholarship payments. This is for your second and third payment. Programs using college tuition scholarships will provide updated transcripts to candidates that candidates can use to renew the college tuition scholarships each year. At the completion of the cohort, Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate programs are responsible for issuing transcripts, completing candidate data report, and supporting candidates to complete their CDA with the CDA Council. The transcripts should include a list of the coursework, the grade of the coursework completed, the name of the program, the name of the candidate, and the dates of enrollment in the program. This is requirement, and this is going to be required for the candidate to complete the ancillary certificate. The candidate data report is something that you're going to turn into the department. The program must complete the candidate data report and submit within 60 days of candidate coursework completion. And the template can be found on our website, which we're going to show in a little bit, the EC Ancillary Program Library. and I ask that you please complete this with as much detail as possible so that we can follow our candidates to myself, and I've included my email on the bottom there. At the completion of your cohort, the programs are responsible for issuing the transcripts, completing candidate data report, and supporting candidates to complete their CDA with the CDA Council. This is very important, assisting in completing the CDA. Ancillary programs will have candidates complete the Louisiana Pathways CDA Assessment Fee Scholarship and submit to Pathways as a group with a copy of the transcript. We have found this by submitting them as a group, they will be processed faster and candidates will receive their CDA faster. Ancillary programs will assist candidates with CDA support and ancillary certificate processing. And that's just explaining to the candidates how to go about completing their ancillary certificate once they complete your program. Candidates must submit to LDE the following documents to receive the ancillary certificate. They'll need their transcript, the high school diploma or equivalent, and the CDA from the CDA Council.
Thanks, Michelle. And we are very happy to have Michelle here. She's been answering a lot of your questions and will continue to do so. So thanks for sharing that with us. I do want to just note one thing about this assisting in the completing the CDA. So as I'm sure you all remember from when you first did your applications for program approval, there are several measures that programs said that they would measure their success based on. So this is that program evaluation section of your BESE application. The expectation is, of course, as you know, that was committed to the board, that all of those measures are being fulfilled. And we just want to remind everybody that a key component of that, and everybody put forth a plan for how they would support their candidates to get that CDA and the ancillary certificate. I know that we are continuing to work on strategies to support retention and completion of our candidates to get them through the coursework, but if we get them through the coursework and we don't take those final steps, you know, they still have the training and that's great, but they're not going to meet the policy requirement, and even more important, possibly, they're not going to get their tax credit. So we really want to remind our teachers, you know, you need to take that final step. It could literally get you up to $3,300 every year for doing it. So, you know, that's maybe more compelling than just following the rules and doing what you're supposed to, but both of them are obviously really important. Okay. And we also want to just talk very quickly about the process for revising BESE-approved programs. So many of you have already navigated this just through your own needing to do so, but we do have a process for requesting a revision, and I'll let Michelle talk through that just really quickly.
Okay, as programs identify changes to strengthen programs as described in the application for program approval, some things may change and you may wish to expand to an additional parish or shorten your coursework, or there may be other reasons or things you may need to adapt as you move forward in your program. In order to do this, you must submit a request for revision form, and that's located on the website for approval. If it's major revisions to your program, the program may need to go back to BESE for approval. If it's minor revisions, you will be notified of the decision within 4 weeks of the receipt of the request.
Great. And we have received a lot of those. Many programs, as Michelle mentioned, have just wanted to expand regions. That's great. Just as a note, when we expand regions, if you're going to be formally recruiting in a region, we do ask that you revise or submit a plan to us for how you will work with those regions. The reason for that is we know how essential community engagement is for a highly functional program, and so we want to make sure that ancillary certificate programs, if they expand to recruit in new regions, they're not doing so in a silo. They're really working with community partners, whether that's the Early Childhood Lead Agency or a nonprofit or just a coalition of directors, whoever it may be. We want to make sure that that's taking place. So that's why we ask for that request for revision. Also, we need to always be able to show BESE that we're following through on what we committed to. Okay, so we are now closing in on our last section. I do see a few questions have been coming in, but if you have any, please do start submitting them so we can get to them before the closeout of this webinar, but we'll talk through these final slides. So as we have started to collect more and more candidate data reports, we're able to learn more about the audience of our early childhood ancillary certificate program completers, so the graduates from your programs. So this is what we know so far, and we are still looking for some additional data, but so far we know that we have had over 230 candidates complete a BESE-approved program. 20% were new to the field, 48% had been there between 1 and 3 years. We know, and we hear it from you, and we saw it in your data, leaving or quitting the Type 3 Child Care Center seems to be the most common reason a candidate has for not completing the ancillary program. We know that this is a little bit, and may at times feel a little bit like an uphill battle with the high turnover rates that are in our industry. We need to continue to monitor this very closely so that we can make our best efforts at supporting candidates to continue if they go to another Type 3 center, making sure that we pick it up with them and that they haven't put in a lot of time and effort for nothing. We also are able to look at the change in class scores from initial observations to final observations. And we see that there is an increase in class scores from the initial observation to the final observation for most candidates, which is of course good. It shows that the coursework that you are providing focused on class is working. Down here, you can kind of see, we were getting at this earlier, we see a very small number of program completers that have applied for and received their ancillary certificates. It is true that we are not yet at July 1, 2019, but we would really expect this number to be higher, both in its reporting from you all, if you've tracked that, and also in the verification and spot checking that we can do on our side. We want to really make sure that we are doing our best to follow up with candidates, figure out if maybe they are confused in the coursework, maybe something got submitted and got lost somewhere along the way. Whatever it is, this is a new requirement. It's new for directors. It's new for teachers. So part of the reason that we spent that 15 minutes really going back through the requirements is just to make sure that we have as much accurate information out there. Candidates are not done with this whole training process until they have that early childhood ancillary certificate as awarded by the LDE. Okay, I'm going to very boldly attempt to do a screen share and show you all where we can find our key classroom supports. So somewhat recently, we added a early childhood classroom supports library box for early childhood ancillary certificate programs. I want to make sure everybody knows where this is and how to find it, because as we are evolving these processes, we are updating the documents as people say, hey, this looks like an error, or it would make more sense if it was put this way. We're very responsive to that. We want to make sure that everybody's getting the most updated version of documents. So I will very quickly try to show you where that is. You can wish me luck. We're just going to hope that it's working. So if you go to louisianabelieves.com, I promise this is simple. but I know we get a lot of feedback on our website. You would go to early childhood. Everything related to preparing and certifying teachers for teachers is right here. However, all documents are always in our libraries that are listed below. So you would go to the Classroom Supports library. You can see this is everything that teachers would need, as well as the other pages that are related to classroom support. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, because you all are a very special group, we've added a box here for resources for BESE-Approved Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate Programs. So this is everything that is for you all, and this is where all the most updated versions will be. So this is the summary guidance we were talking about. This will download right here, the candidate data report, that Excel file that you are to submit within 60 days of completion. Our past webinars are here, a process for requesting revisions, scholarship applications, so the application that goes to Louisiana Pathways. And then within a few days, you will see the recording of this webinar right there. So please be mindful to check that website, that box, to make sure that you are looking at the most recent version of the document. We try to let you know when we update things, but just you can be sure that it is always most updated if online. Okay, so there are a few additional opportunities coming up that we want you all to be aware of and keep on your radar. So as some of you are familiar with and some are not, the department hosts regional collaboratives 4 times a year. And these often involve supervisors from school districts. Sometimes we involve child care directors, and they often involve teacher preparation programs. So our talent office often holds sessions for teacher preparation programs. As we have grown the number of ancillary certificate programs, we now have a critical mass to be able to offer these opportunities for you all. So we are hoping to start the week of January 28th to 31st. We'll let you know which collaboratives we will be able to offer sessions at, but to offer some collaborative sessions for early childhood ancillary certificate programs. These collaborations will feature some logistical updates, so similar to webinars, but will also provide opportunities for us to collaborate on some of the challenges that I think many of us are facing. So recruitment, retention, how to really integrate coaching and class into some of those CDA subject areas that are a little bit tough. If you have something that you would like to share or would like particularly focused professional development on, please feel free to let us know. We're always happy to be responsive to that. While we have lots of stuff we want to share with you, we always want to make sure it's what you want to hear. So please feel free to reach out to us and stay tuned for details and specific dates. We're also doing a series of on-site visits with some programs around the state. We've already started some of these. We really love the opportunity to get out and see the good work that's being done around the state and bring various members of the state office with us. This is more just a heads up. You may hear from us, and if there's something that you would really like to highlight in your own program, you should always feel free to let us know. And then finally, as a particular update for Cohort 3, so if you were in Cohort 3, meaning you got approved last year, we will be doing a check-in call soon. So Michelle will be reaching out to you in the next few days to try to set up a check-in call in December, hopefully before everybody goes on holiday break. This will be just to check how your program's going, if it's launched, and then check in the status of the grant. Okay. So I will answer the questions that we have. If you have other questions, please send them. We have 7 minutes. Okay, so I see one question. Does the CDA scholarship cover the cost of the visit? Yes. So the Louisiana Pathways Scholarship for CDAs, the way the CDA scholarship works, candidates apply for the CDA scholarship once they have their professional portfolio required. That fee is the full fee that goes to the Council for Professional Recognition, which allows them to take the test and get evaluated and receive their CDA credential, but they have to have done all of the portfolio and training requirements first. For the high school diploma or equivalent, will a scanned copy be acceptable? Yes. So when you are submitting your early childhood ancillary certificate application, a scanned copy of a high school diploma or equivalent is absolutely fine. We don't need an original of that. I will wait a few more minutes to see if anybody else types a question, just a few notes. So I have linked here the procedures and guidelines for BESE-approved programs. You can also find those in that handy dandy resources for BESE-approved ancillary certificate programs box that I shared with you. I also wanted to highlight a very exciting report that was released just yesterday. Hopefully you can link from here. If not, you can look it up. It was released by an organization called New America, Lessons from the Bayou State, 3 Reforms for Improving Teaching and Caregiving. This article features a lot of information about the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate and the unique approach Louisiana has taken. I think it tells a really interesting story. As a shout out to some of our friends in Lake Charles, they featured some interviews with the program and some directors there. So we always love to see those voices and experiences highlighted at a national level. So check it out. One additional question that's come in, can you give more information as to what is an example of a program design change? So if you look at the program revision request document, it attempts to give a little bit more information about this. It's hard to picture every example that would be a substantial change. For the most part, if a program is changing the order of a coursework, revising an applied practice experience, possibly moving some coursework from being online to in-person or in-person to online, those are relatively minor revisions. And for the most part can just be reviewed, and once you get an okay just over email from us, you're good to go. That's definitely true if you are to change program parishes. It's definitely true if you want to, abbreviate the length of your program or possibly make it longer, depending on what you're learning. The cases where it would be more substantial is if an individual program wanted to maybe totally change a course, remove a focus on some content, if they wanted to totally shift from a in-person coaching model to a 100% some room for gray in that categorization. But if it's significant to the experience of the coursework, if we think that it could be, evaluated very differently on the rubric that was used to evaluate your initial program, then that's when we would have a longer conversation. Okay, I do not see any other questions coming on, so I'm going to go ahead and let us close out. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. And please feel free always to reach out to either myself or Michelle or both if you have any questions, and we will be in touch soon. Thank you all.